Welcome to episode 80, where we're going to look at long-term client retention strategies. That is, how do we keep and maintain clients for as long as possible? David, before we get into it, what is the longest standing client relationship you know of within our network?
Approximately 12 years.
Wow, that's a long
And
time.
counting, yes.
Now, that is down to the strategies we're going to discuss today and how we work with business owners as a consultant, a coach, or an advisor. Now, our methodology is to work with clients over the long term, and this kind of goes against the grain of what's normally done as a business consultant. Most of them inject themselves into a business for a fixed period of time to solve a problem over the short, maybe the medium term. Now, the typical advisor gives advice and lessons, and this is often over the long term, but what I find is that they leave really long gaps between meeting with the clients. Typically 6 months or even a year isn't uncommon, and that's just not meeting with them regularly enough to provide the consistent advice and the accountability that clients need to succeed. Now, we often find that coaches don't have the substance of a consultant or an advisor, so they struggle to keep the relationship going over the long term. Now, if you want to know more about the differences between a coach, a consultant, and an advisor, then tune in to episode 65 of Everything Business Consulting. That has all of the details you need to know about the key differences. David, before we dive into the 7 strategies of how to keep a client for the long term, let's start with why we would want to keep a client over a longer period of time.
Well, the objective, Julius, is to get into a position as quickly as possible where you are not prospecting or looking for new clients. If you can imagine a graph with 2 intersecting lines, and the first line is prospecting time, you want the prospecting time going down, and the other graph line, you want that line going up.
So like a big X.
Like a big X, yes. And it crosses in the middle at about 3 months or something like that. And so what happens is you're no longer prospecting, although you probably wanted to keep 5 or 10% of your time aside for prospecting to keep the pot bubbling. But a lot of people don't do that. They get themselves their 10, 12, 15 clients, whatever it is, and they just use that client base to get further referrals from, because that the clients love the work that you're doing so much that they give you their friends and they give you their acquaintances. You just got to ask them and they'll tell you. So yeah, you need to not constantly need to look for new clients, which is really good. That then means that you've got a consistent income because you're dealing with the same people and week on week, and you're being paid on a percentage of their revenue. So as you achieve success with them and as their revenue increases, your fees increase. And there's one of our consultants I might have mentioned earlier. He started at about $2,500 a month, and he's up to about 8 or 9 now. So that's triple, even a bit more. So yes, so that's what you need to do. It's another benefit of not having to look for other people. You've got to realise that Rome wasn't built in a day, and it took hundreds of years. And it's really the same with a client list. Although you can build it quite fast. We're not building Rome. We're building relationships with business owners in your local area. So, and you can totally control that. It's not externally controlled, it's internally controlled by you. So you decide whether you want to go and see a client on Saturday morning, or you want to work late on a Thursday night to see a guy because he's got a massive contract going, all those sorts of things. So you operate the tap that turns the clients on and turns them off. So that's important to remember. You also you want to see them succeed. I'll tell you what, it's so gratifying when you go into a client and you sign them up and they've got a whole lot of problems and issues and things like that, and you're able to find the solutions for those problems and come up with a plan that will help their business go forward.
And is it easier to achieve that over the long term rather than one of these short-term relationships?
You don't really want a short-term relationship. Don't turn them down. I've had a couple of $40,000 business planning deals, which is really good money on an hourly rate. It's fabulous, and I didn't turn them down. I just built them into what I was doing and carried on going. But 90% of my income came from long-term clients. Of course, as I said, making them succeed is fantastic. And it's important too, over the long term, because we use some sophisticated management reporting programs, we're able to give them something that they've never had before. Before usually they get an annual or an 18-month report for their accountant showing them whether they did good or did bad. Well, we report every month with the sophisticated reporting that we've got, and we're able to talk about success. They can see themselves succeed, or they can see themselves not succeeding, and they can see by key performance indicators that we provide to them why they're not succeeding and what's going wrong and what they're not doing, all those sorts of things. So yeah, it's really good. So business challenges are ongoing and they're changing over time, because just think of the pandemic, just think of a lot of the issues that have flowed off the pandemic that nobody even knew existed in the past, and now they're becoming things.
And inevitably, if you're helping a business to grow, there's going to be growing pains that were unforeseen and that the business owner and the management team aren't equipped to deal with. But you as a consultant or a coach are going to be able to help them get through that.
Yeah, but remember that all the training that you've done for this and all of the things that you've learned from your other clients, they all start percolating in your head and they all start helping you to become better and better and better. So the challenges are ongoing, they'll always change, and you supporting them to improve and grow, it'll be an ongoing process. It'll never stop. And this is the best way to make a real difference with your clients.
What I'm hearing from you, David, is that a long-term relationship is it's better for the client. They're going to get the results that they want, hopefully, and if they're putting in the effort. And for you as a consultant, it's most certainly the best way for consistent, secure income and building a long-term business. So I think it's definitely the winning way. The first strategy we would use is to set a long-term expectation from day one, to start how you mean to go on in all of your communication. David, how would you approach this?
It's important that they know what's expected from them and what is expected from you, so that they don't get upset if it's not exactly how they've got it in their mind. Like you talk about the meetings, you talk about the process you're going to go through and what you're going to do and what they're going to do and how you're going to work together. That's very, very important, that is, because it's got to be long term. Like, he might have owned this business for 10 years. You are not going to turn this thing around in 10 weeks. It's going to need, and also too, it's like a bit like an oil tanker. Like you can't turn around an oil tanker like you can turn around a jet ski. And it's going to take some time to develop your client / oil tanker, to develop the skills to be able to become more, have more ability to turn around quickly. It takes time, because you don't want to break the business in the process of trying to do too quick a turn.
It might capsize if you turn it too quickly.
Flip the thing over, then we'll have a big oil slick. So we don't want that. So yes, as long as both of you understand how the system works, well, but more importantly, how they understand exactly how it works and what you're going to do and what you're working towards.
I think also if you've got any contract or agreement with them, obviously that should outline how you're going to work with them, and that it's for a very long period of time. That's the whole purpose for this.
Yeah.
An example that I can think of around this expectation, David, from the network is I know that one of our consultants, I was talking to him, he said when he was talking to a prospect or a lead, he said, let's just try it for a couple of months and see how we go. And that set a very short-term expectation, I believe, with this prospect. And he was able to sign them up, get them on board, but the relationship didn't last long at all. It only lasted that couple of months. And I think that's a very good example of why you shouldn't set a short-term expectation, because that, there is no long-term expectation, so you shouldn't expect it to go any longer. So that's a reason why you wouldn't set a short-term expectation, and we should really focus on the long term. Now, the second strategy we have for you today is to form a personal relationship. Now, a purely transactional business relationship treats you like a service, like an everyday commodity, and your client is an everyday buyer. If you want to build a solid long-term relationship, it's critical to have a deep and trusting, a professional, but also a slight personal element to that relationship you have going on there. David, can you give your 2 cents on that?
Yeah, sure. I think it's important that we all listen to them and let them confide in you. I mentioned in an earlier podcast that we wear 7 or 8 hats: coach, counsellor, consultant, confidant, mentor, all these things, and we keep flipping hats all the time as we're working with them and discussing with them. But we want them to confide in you without any judgment. Like, they'll tell you, you'll know when you've got that relationship when they start telling you personal things. Not that we want to know their personal things, but it's a very good indicator that they're viewing you as becoming a mentor and a confidant, and they'll tell you things that they probably wouldn't tell anybody else. So that's an important part, and that you make an effort to get to know them on a personal level. Like, you need to know their partner's name, their kid's name. You need to know that Jimmy plays first 15 for the high school, and Nancy's going to be a New Zealand rep for netball, and all this sort of stuff. And which shows that when you go to the meeting, so how did Jenny go in the netball tournament on the weekend down in Hamilton, the New Zealand reps. So it shows that you care. And there's nothing wrong with taking notes on this. Like when you end up with 10 or 15 clients, it's going to be hard to remember all of their kids' names and their wife or partner's names, things like that. Also, too, do little but meaningful things, like find out what coffee they drink and bring them their coffee when you go for your meetings with them. Try and find out when their birthday is from their receptionist or somebody, and celebrate it with them. Just show that you care. And also make time for them to do things outside of work. Like, we have a consultant north of Auckland who every year buys season tickets to the basketball, the Breakers basketball, and who apparently are quite good, and for about $300 he gets every game that's played locally, and he takes a different client every time, and they love it. It's fantastic. So you can do all sorts of things like that. It could be rugby, it could be soccer, cricket, whatever sport it is. So that is really important, because it shows you're doing the little things.
So it's all about forming a personal relationship, and some of those examples we're going to go into a bit more detail on how you attract that a little bit later in the podcast. The third strategy we're going to cover is to create a long-term vision with the business owner. So you've already set some kind of expectation that you are going to be working with them over the long term. Now it's time to solidify that with a long-term vision, a long-term set of business goals, and even personal goals. The client needs to understand and accept that big goals are a long-term proposition and you become part of this long-term strategy. David, can you talk to this a little bit?
Yeah, sure. What we are attempting to achieve with our clients is a 3 to 5 year business and personal vision of what they want in those periods of time. It might be a retirement vision and business plan required. It might be 3 years or it could be 5 years. What we do is, if it's 5 years, when we get to the end of year one, we actually extend it out another year. So it's always 5 years out. So they're always looking into the future and building, creating. So we do that personal vision and that business vision. We get the wives or partners involved in it because they're part of it too. And there might be some things that they want, and there might be some things that the owner of the business wants or the operator of the business wants. So it's very important. Once we've achieved that vision, we turn it into a framed document. We get it framed for them. We get it all typed out and everything. And you take them a draft first, and they go, change this, change that. I don't like this. And then when it's finally signed off, then you get it framed and get a couple of copies made, and you put it up on the wall in their office. It is.
Then another very useful tool is to produce a vision board of their personal vision. Piece together all of their personal goals and desires, the things that motivate them, the things that they're striving for. Maybe it's a big house, maybe it's a nice car or a holiday, whatever it is. Put them together, and one of the best places to use this is to create a background for their laptop or their computer. If you can do that, then they're going to see that every single day, every time they're working, they are reminded of why they're putting in this effort and what they are aiming for.
Yep.
Now, I made a reflection diary for one of my clients, and what I did is a diary for them basically to reflect on every single day. They did a little bit of journaling, and I pasted their personal vision into that, so that every time they were doing their reflection, they could go and have a look at what they were aiming for, and they could reflect on whether they were doing the right or the wrong thing for that, and any progress that they needed to work towards to be able to get where they were going. The fourth strategy for a long-term relationship is simply to improve profitability and solve problems within the business. Now, if you're in there to help this business improve, well, then you've got to do that. That's what you're there for. Solving their problems and pushing the clients towards implementing the systems and the processes and moving them towards their goals, that is what you're there to do. So you have to deliver the results that you promised. Now, one strategy to do this specifically is when you start working with them, do a range of things to improve the profitability as fast as possible. There are a whole lot of little things you can do. We've actually got a podcast on this specific topic, and I'll put it in the show notes so you can refer to that. But improving the profitability means that the business owner and the management team can see that you actually have made a significant improvement in the business, so they're not going to try and get rid of you, and also your fee is going to be covered with this improved profitability. So that's never ever a concern. You solidify yourself really quickly as being an integral part of the performance of this business. Do you have anything to add there, David, on improving profitability and solving problems?
Well, yeah, you don't need to say it to them. It becomes perfectly obvious. Like once you start delivering monthly reports that have got graphs in them and things like that, and the report goes loss, or very low profit, and then all of a sudden, from the day you walked in the door, within a month or two, the thing goes up 25-30 degrees on the graph. Like, it's pretty darn obvious. And if you can go back 3 years and show a pretty lackluster business that limps along, survives but limps along, then it becomes very obvious when you start getting fantastic results on a profitability graph.
We were actually talking about this the other day, where I told you the example of a small client that I had locally, and I was able to do some very simple profit improvement techniques on this business, just increasing the price of some of their stuff, packaging some of their services and products together and sort of promoting them, and then also incentivizing some of the staff to charge out more and sell more of their time. And we were able to get about a 45% increase in revenue within 3 or so months, and that meant that the owner basically doubled his profit over the same time frame. So it's not as difficult as you think it's going to be. Now the fifth example, or the fifth strategy we're going to give you, is to have one-on-one meetings with the owner. This allows you to manage the relationship and solve any small issues before they become a big problem, because problems are what terminates a relationship. You want to avoid that at all costs. And it also gives you the opportunity to apply any personal coaching and really develop that personal relationship with the business owner. You have anything to add to that, David?
Yeah. Having that one-on-one meeting, as Julia said, allows you, the consultant, to maintain the personal relationship. You don't want a situation where employees or staff members are stabbing you in the back. They will initially be a little bit kind of concerned, who's this guy, who's this girl that's come along and everything else, and working with the owner and everything. But after a while they'll realise that you're only there to do good things. But you've got to maintain that personal relationship, the one-on-one relationship, because you may need to talk, well, you will need to be talking to the owner about staff members and things like that. And you can't talk about staff members in front of staff members, so that's really important. And you do need to be that sounding board, that mentor, that confidant, if they want to tell you personal things that are going on. It just really strengthens the relationship.
The sixth strategy is to create a client relationship maintenance calendar. David, do you want to tell us a little bit about where you would start with one of these?
Yeah, go to your local stationery shop and you can buy one of those annual calendars that's got every day of the year on it, and it's shiny, and you can use a whiteboard marker on it. The fine ones, what they call them, Stevens fine, they're the fine ones rather than the fat ones. Anyway, the idea is that you need to make a plan going forward of the things that you're going to do with your clients and prospects to a certain extent, mainly with your clients, to make your footprint as big as a tennis court, but it's only really the normal size that it is. So you need to be in their face all the time. I think it's called omnipotent. Is that right?
It's called omnipresent.
Omnipresent. I always get that wrong. It's called omnipresent. And that means that you have a far bigger footprint or presence in their life than what you actually do. And you do that by, firstly, you sign up for Google Alerts, which is a free service where if you've got a concrete guy, you sign up for concrete paving manufacturing systems, and every day...
Those are the keywords you would put into Google.
Keywords in the thing. And every day or every week, whichever you choose, you'll get a report on that industry. It could be engineering, it could be aluminium joinery, it could be bakeries, all sorts of things. So you get this free email every day or every week of interesting stuff coming in. So you cut, paste it, send it to your client, and he goes, oh my God, this guy knows everything about everything. So that's one thing you put on the calendar. I'm going to put their birthdays. I'm going to, if I can find out their anniversary of their wedding, I'm going to put that on there. And just things where every month they get something from me. It might be a gift basket to celebrate 1 year of being together. It might be a gift basket, if it's a big client, might be a gift basket a week after they sign up, and I say, I'd just like you to have one of these as a token of my appreciation. Things like that, so you can keep track of everything and see where it is at a glance.
What I did is I didn't use a wall planner. I used a little bit of technology there. I used Outlook, calendar, and also a spreadsheet that I set up with all of the tasks that I needed to complete within the month, including this maintenance. So when I needed to invoice clients, I had that in the schedule. When I needed to ask my clients to compile their management reports. I knew what day I had to ask for that kind of stuff when I had their all the other things we've talked about, had their birthdays and all of that sort of stuff in there. So I had that automatically popping up on my email every single day that I had to look for an action. So you can do it in a digital format as well. Now the seventh and final strategy we're going to give you today is to be indispensable and invaluable. Provide things to your client that they can't do themselves. Now, a couple of examples that I've got I had with a client that I was working with is one of them really struggled to manage their staff. Now, I wasn't going to be in there every single day to manage their staff for them, because that's not what my role was, it's not what I promised them, and it's also not what was going to be profitable to me. But when I went in there every fortnight for our management meetings with the business owner, I had a quick 15-minute meeting with the entire team. We got them together, and that kind of activity was really well appreciated by the staff members, because they all got to get together with the business owner and have a quick chat and a bit of a rev up. And it was also very much appreciated by the business owner, because it was something he didn't feel entirely comfortable doing, but doing that actually made him feel more comfortable to have conversations with his staff members as time went on. David, is there anything you might do to make yourself indispensable and invaluable to a client?
Well, I think everything that we do makes us that,
Yep.
indispensable and invaluable, and especially the monthly reporting and the key performance indicators. Most, over 75-85% of business owners do not have accurate monthly reporting, and if you can't measure it, you can't manage it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's very important. Like, there's nothing better than a graph. It's got a red line on it that goes under the line into negative for motivation of improving the business. Every time it goes under the line, it's a loss of equity and profit. So yeah, I think that's very important, and you will soon, very quickly, once you start working with clients, you'll start to very quickly develop almost like a sixth or seventh sense as to what needs to be done.
And I can think of another example when I was out there helping people through the COVID period. Now, this was when businesses were massively struggling for all sorts of reasons, but the biggest one that I found was a lack of cash flow. And what I did is, instead of doing a monthly report, I did a quick weekly check-in. It took me 15 minutes per client just to manage and look at their cash flow every single week. So it didn't take a lot of time, but it felt like I was there every single week helping the business owner to manage their cash flow. That was something very, very well received, and it made me invaluable over that time period, where business owners normally would have felt like they were bearing the brunt of all of that stress themselves, and it was this great unknown. All of a sudden they were getting to share that stress and have a plan on a weekly basis, even if it was just from a purely supportive point of view. It can be anything, but we just have to make sure that whatever you're doing to support your clients and become indispensable and invaluable is worth the time. You don't want to be doing something where you're there chicken plucking, David.
Yes, chicken plucking is a no-no, and that means doing things that can be done by somebody else better and cheaper than you.
Absolutely, we do not want to do that. So in summary, keeping clients for the long term is just a no-brainer in my opinion. And we have 7 strategies we've talked about today. The first is to set a long-term expectation. The second was to form a personal relationship with the business owner. The third is to create a long-term vision with the business owner, and that long-term vision can be extended out every single year you work with them. It doesn't have to be a 5-year vision that becomes 4, 3, 2, 1 as you creep up through your relationship. You should continue to extend that out over time, and every year do another planning event, make a big go of it, and create another 5-year personal vision and another 5-year business vision, so you continue to keep that 5-year carrot in front of them, so they're continuing to improve and grow their business. The fourth strategy is to improve profitability and solve problems. The whole purpose for you being in this business. The fifth strategy is to have one-on-one meetings with the owner. Now, the sixth strategy was to create a client relationship maintenance calendar, so David, feel like you are omnipresent, like you're always helping them, supporting them through whatever it is they are trying to achieve. And the seventh strategy is to be indispensable and valuable to your client. Provide them with things they can't do themselves and really make them feel like you are there as a partner on that journey. For all show notes on this episode, visit consultex.com/episode/80. We have just set up a new website for Everything Business Consulting, which you can find at everythingbusinessconsulting.com. Please leave a review on your favorite listening platforms because it really helps us to reach more people.
You've been listening to Everything Business Consulting with David Thexton and Julius Bloom.